Welcome to the Supply Chain Ambassador podcast. I'm your host, Bruno, helping you navigate the world of supply chain in a fun and engaging way. On today's podcast, I have a repeat guest, Richard Quinn. Richard joined the Department of National Defense as a logistics officer in the Canadian Armed Forces in June of 1985 and enjoyed a career as an Army logistician for 32 years before transitioning to a career within the public service. Richard has been employed with D&D for 42 years. He has earned a master's in business administration degree with a concentration in supply chain management. He has been an instructor for the Canada School of Public Service for the past 8 years. He has also been a member of the board of directors for the Canadian Institute for the Procurement and Material Management for the past 6 years. He recently announced his retirement to take effect at the end of October, and I'm sure he's very excited to hit that milestone. But for now, welcome, Richard.
Thank you, Bruno. I'm very pleased that you asked me to take part in this podcast today.
Yes, absolutely. Can you remind our audience members of who you are and what you do again?
Aside from the brief introduction you provided, I can tell you that currently my role within the public service and within the Department of National Defense is I'm a procurement manager within the Director General Material Systems and Supply Chain Division. I support 4 separate directorates, and I have a team that are very capable individuals who will help me support those 4 directions, primarily with the provision of professional services or services-related contracts and a bit of material management or goods purchasing at the same time. And as you know, I've been a member during all this time with the Board of Directors of the Canadian Institute of Procurement and Material Management, but I'll be stepping down from that role. I've also been a mentor under CIPMM and an instructor for the Canada School of Public Service, but I've managed to recruit other fellow material management practitioners to fill the gap as I transition into retirement.
Wonderful. Any favorite hobby of yours that we have yet to know about?
You asked me prior to the podcast, what are my plans? And one of them does include getting into my hobby of woodworking. I'm a very basic beginning woodworker. Over the past few years, I've collected all the key tools one needs. I've got a separate custom or pre-built workshop that's sitting in my yard with all my tools in it, and they're designed so I can take them in and take them out. I've got an older brother who retired last year who is a very capable artisan, if I could call him that, naturally. And between the two of us, we're going to keep our projects moving along. That's my hobby. At the same time, as a hobby, I'm going to continue in the teaching sphere as I've approached the 2 local high schools in the area where I live, and they're both quite pleased to have me on board as a substitute teacher come this fall. That's assuming I can tolerate the role of being a substitute teacher with today's adolescents.
There you have it. And hopefully you'll be curating some future procurement officers too.
Who knows?
So tell me, how has your work changed since we last spoke?
Since we last spoke, at the time I was in a role of a senior supply chain advisor to my Director General. And I did that for a couple of years, and I've now transitioned into my current role for the last 2.5 years as someone focused specifically in the management of the procurement of goods and services, which for me, in fact, is a new role because I'd never actually been focused primarily in just the procurement domain. I was pan logistics or pan supply chain for most of my career up until this one particular time. I've had to learn more of the technical process part of procurement, like what step followed by what step kind of thing. I've always been up to speed on all the major policies and initiatives, imperatives, given my role as an instructor for the school, but I've never actually had to process a procurement from what items need to be put into the system of record and how is it done and that kind of thing. So actually sign off on contracts, which I've never really had to do before. So I've had to do that now. So for me, it's a bit of it's been exciting as well as a bit nerve-wracking, because I want to make sure I do it right off the start.
Yeah, absolutely. In our space, making sure we do it well is imperative to our success. But I'm sure you've slid right in with your past experiences and you've been well prepared for it. Um, Speaking of being prepared, what trends or shifts do you see coming that we could prepare for in this space?
That's an excellent question, and it took me time to think about it because there are a lot of changes going on in the supply chain domain, both federally and in the business sector. And today, it's not really possible to separate the two. What's happening in the business sector is affecting the way we do business within the government domain. If you'll permit me, I've made a couple of notes about what these, I would say maybe the top 4 trends are that I would like to just identify with a federal government lens to them as opposed to a business sector lens. The first one would be a shift to speed and agility, which is going from a compliance-heavy to an outcome-driven approach. Today, specifically for D&D, is defense organizations are globally under pressure to deliver faster. Hence, we have the Defense Investment Agency that has recently been established. And this has been primarily driven by geopolitical instability and rapid technological cycles. So what's it mean for D&D in my case, as well as other government departments? I'd say, first of all, traditional linear procurement models are too slow. And we're seeing an increased use of iterative contracting, phased delivery, and rapid acquisition pathways. How do we prepare for this? Some things we can do is building playbooks for modular procurements, where we take big projects and break them down into smaller ones. And then we perhaps can move forward with pre-establishing some standing offers and supply arrangements that allow for faster call-ups. And then at that point, we also need to help our teams with risk-managed decision-making because we do not have access to perfect information. And with the speed with which things can change, there's always going to be an uncertainty or an unknown. So we have to become more comfortable with risk, but understand how to address that risk in a way that doesn't jeopardize the outcomes that we're looking for. So that's the first one. The next one is, it's undeniable, the fact that we have a digital or data-driven procurement going on these days. Procurement is becoming quickly a data discipline, and it's not just a process function. And we can see that by the investments that have been made into the Canada School of Public Service curriculum. There's now an entire line of courses to assist procurement and material management specialists with understanding that the data domain that we now find ourselves working in predominantly. So with this data-driven domain that we have on our plates now, the use of analytics is becoming much more routine. And we're using these analytics to help us understand supplier performance, cost benchmarking, and demand forecasting. So we're going to see now a greater integration of procurement into enterprise systems because most departments now are adopting some form of enterprise system or ERP, and both the procurement, but also on the material management side, asset management.
Yeah.
So what can we do to prepare for this trend that's upon us is, one, we have to invest in dashboards that support both visibility on procurement as well as material management activities. We need to standardize the data capturing that we're making across the contracts that we're putting out there to our vendors. And finally, as I mentioned earlier, we need to build and enhance our data literacy across our practitioner communities out there. Yeah. So, and that's in addition to just understanding how to use the system, it's understanding how to use the data that is now captured in that system. So that's the second trend. The third one would be supply chain resiliency and sovereignty. We've heard our Prime Minister speak on this on a number of occasions, especially with the geopolitical events that are going on that we're impacted by. And so what's it mean for D&D and other government departments is, one, we're moving towards reducing our reliance on single source or even foreign suppliers for our critical capabilities. We've heard our Prime Minister make that claim many times. And then we have, along with that, this increased emphasis on domestic industry capabilities and securing sourcing. And we've seen the government put forth initiatives and policies to do exactly it, enhance our domestic capability. How can we prepare for this trend is embedding supply chain risk assessments early in our procurement planning, and initially also develop some multi-supplier strategies for critical goods and services. We can strengthen the collaboration with other government departments, such as the Innovation, Science and Economic Development Canada and Public Service and Procurement Canada. And finally, we can include resiliency criteria in those bid evaluations that we all are quite familiar with in the procurement domain, and not just cost. So that's the third. My last one would be industry engagement is becoming much more continuous. Again, we've heard our government publicly make statements that this is where they're leaning to. And so we're moving from more so from a one-time RFP interactions to an ongoing engagement with industry. And what this really means is earlier supplier engagement is becoming essential in order for us to understand and how to use emerging technology, and more so to shape realistic requirements.
Yeah.
And finally, the co-development of models are growing between us and the business sector.
Yeah.
So what can we do to prepare for that? I said one of the options is we can formalize pre-procurement engagement practices, have industry days, make use of more requests for information, and issue and manage innovation challenges. We've seen that some departments already have that. There's an ideas program that exists specifically for that, and there's another agency that is being stood up by the government to specifically support the growth and development of new ideas, outside of the box thinking kind of thing. We need to train our teams on what fairness and transparency boundaries are during these engagements. Since we're encouraging the engagements, we got to make sure that people understand, well, what are the boundaries when it comes to these engagements? And then improve or enhance our lessons learned, that feedback loop after our procurements, to ensure that we feed back into our processes and improve them as we evolve, make it more of an iterative process. So those, what I would say, are the top 4 trends that I've been tracking, because I'm a professionally curious fellow. And I spend time doing just that, finding where are we going, and what do we need to do to adapt effectively so that we can keep pace with the speed with which we're seeing change happening in front of us.
And boy, is there lots of change that's happening. And I'm glad you really highlighted some of those key adaptive points that we can focus on, focusing on the outcomes, right? The sovereignty and the vendor engagement, the focus on Canadian products and building Canadian businesses. There's just so much value in that. I'm going to have to rewatch this quite a few more times just to make sure I'm taking down all the notes in a succinct way. So thank you for sharing that. Is there something that you would believed earlier in your career that you think about different today?
Well, over the course of my career with the federal government, both as a serving member of the Canadian Armed Forces and now with the public service, I've come to see things a little bit differently. Earlier on, being a member in uniform, I generally believe that success was primarily about following established rules and processes, that compliance was the focus, and if you followed the process correctly, you were doing the job well. But with experience, especially transitioning into public service, I would say my perspective has broadened somewhat. I still see compliance as essential because it underpins fairness, transparency, and accountability in how we use public funds. However, I've come to understand that compliance is not the end goal. The real objective is to deliver results that support programs and operations to Canadians. So what has changed for me is the emphasis on outcomes and value. So good procurement is not just about following the process or getting the lowest price. It's about ensuring that the solution meets the need, performs over time, and manages risk appropriately. This often requires flexibility, sound judgment, and early collaboration with our stakeholders. I've also learned the importance of working more closely with others, whether it's the technical experts, program teams, or suppliers. Meanwhile, trying to maintain fairness and integrity. So for me, the best outcomes come from combining perspectives and not working in isolation. So in short, I would say my thinking has shifted from a narrower focus of following the rules to a more balanced approach, which is respecting the rules while using them to enable value-driven and effective outcomes. That shift, I believe, has made me more effective in both supporting operational needs and the broader responsibilities we have as public servants.
I love that. No comments there. What's next, Richard? What are you working towards?
Well, as you have stated earlier, I'm retiring by the end of October, somewhere around 140 days if I was counting them, but I'm actually not counting them at this point. So I've been preparing myself for transitioning out of the public service because I had to do so before. Transitioning into the Canadian Armed Forces is a big step, and then transitioning out into the public service was my next step. And now I'm transitioning out of the public service to be just a retired Canadian. And so what I have done is over the last little while, I've been developing my skills at being a woodworking hobbyist. But I've also reached out to 2 high schools in the area where I live because I have connections to those high schools and approached them saying, hey, what would you think about me becoming a substitute teacher? And I was received very openly on the part of both schools because being bilingual, I can support both the French language high school as well as the English language high school in my area. So that's what I'm looking to do. And I'd say I'm probably more nervous about becoming a high school teacher than I am about being a public servant or joining the military. That's given the fact that one of my daughters is a high school teacher and my son's partner is teaching at the same high school. I'm not quite. I know what I can expect, but I'm not quite sure I've got everything figured out yet when it comes to doing that. I've got a good sized yard and I've developed planters with all kinds of vegetables in it. So I'm now thinking about, do I take it to the next step and start trying to grow my own seedlings next spring? Okay. So I was experimenting with some flowers that are hard to kill and easy to care for, and we'll see how they do because I just planted them, the seedlings, this past week, so we'll see how they do. But that's what I'm looking to do, and spend a lot more time traveling in this country initially, and growing happily into retirement with my spouse, who is a retired registered nurse for the past 3 years as well. And I have 3 kids, and I have some grandchildren and an older brother in the neighborhood, so it's a matter of spending time with them too.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, it doesn't sound like it sounds like it's going to be a very busy, active period for you as well. But that's wonderful. I have long ways to go, but I will think of you as I emulate having such a great post-procurement activities planned.
I have mentees that I've mentored through the SIPA mentorship program for a number of years now, and I have had a few reach out to me saying, can I still call you when you're retired? And yes. I said, yeah, but just know that I won't necessarily be up to speed on everything that's going on because part of my focus will no longer be this same professional curiosity because I know business need to be professionally curious, but know that I'm a phone call away for any of the people that I've supported over the years. It's part of who I am, which is why I'm getting into teaching as well. I've always wanted to be at service to others, which is the same with the motto for the Royal Canadian Logistics Services Group, service second to none. So I believe in that. So I will continue to make myself available to support anyone within that of my peer group if they ever need me to call upon them.
Speaking of being of support to others, what advice would you give to professionals on what skills that they must develop now?
The answer lies really in what I stated earlier in terms of the top 4 trends. These trends are requiring us to add a few more skills or tools in our personal toolbox. And the first one I mentioned was data literacy. It's fundamental. Understanding what supply chain risk is and developing the skills and tools to make valuable risk-based supply chain decisions. And finally, the use of artificial intelligence tools. Right? Let's understand AI isn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
And I focused initially on data literacy because procurement decisions are increasingly driven by this information. And professionals are now expected to interpret spending patterns, supplier performance, market trends, and contract outcomes. And without the ability to understand and question data, it becomes difficult to demonstrate value for money and question or support sound decision making for the public. Now, in the public sector, we know that transparency and accountability are critical, and being comfortable with data then helps us ensure that recommendations are in fact evidence-based and can stand up to scrutiny. On the supply chain risk assessment and the use of artificial intelligence, both of them reflect how the environment is changing. Supply chains are becoming more complex, but they're also exposed to disruptions such as global events, vendor concentration, and capacity issues. So we as professionals need to be able to proactively identify and manage these risks rather than react after the problem occurs. So, and at the same time, AI tools are becoming part of everyday work. I know I use Copilot fairly regularly to help me validate what my experience, my knowledge is telling me. I said, hey, here's a problem. Here's how I think I should be addressing it. Have I missed anything? Are there other things I should be thinking about? And the Copilot helps me ensure that, oh, yep, I've covered all the bases. Oh, no, I missed this one. And it helps me build that into whatever response or action I want to take. So becoming comfortable with AI tools as part of this data, I would see it's part of data literacy. I see that as one of a new fundamental skill we all need to develop is using them, understanding how they can be used, what their limitations are, and recognizing that it still takes a human to process what it is that AI is suggesting as the answer.
Yeah.
Because we know AI is not perfect. Is it reducing its error rate by virtue of how they're built? They're inherently designed to learn from others. But there are trade-offs. We have to recognize that, hey, everything you put in Google searching is going to be recorded somewhere. Guess what? Everything you put into AI is going to be searchable and recorded. Be cognizant of that in terms of your use of the AI tools. But I would say don't shy away from them, but become skilled as to what they can do for you. In a gentleman at my age, if I can learn how to use AI tools, I would think anyone can.
Any call to action for listeners?
Recently, I participated in a panel discussion at the National Workshop for the Canadian Institute of Procurement and Material Management, and there was a similar question posed of us. And my answer to them was in 3 words: stay professionally curious. The environment we work in, as I said, is changing quickly, and new tools, new risks, new expectations. So the people who will succeed are the ones who keep asking the questions, keep learning, and stay open to new ways of working. Curiosity does drive better decisions, in my belief. It pushes you to explore the data, hence the emphasis on data literacy. The curious people tend to challenge assumptions, and we try tools like AI in a thoughtful way. In our field, where we're responsible for public funds and program delivery, staying curious isn't just a mindset. In my belief, it's a professional responsibility. So that's what I would like to leave our folks with, is stay professionally curious.
I love that. Yeah. I will make sure that's a sticky note on my computer. Stay professionally, stay curious, just to remind me that how important it is to have that curiosity, especially in a world and in a field, professional field that just seems to be constantly changing, moving in different directions, having different priorities imposed on it. But thank you for coming to share such wonderful information. I do wish you the best with your retirement. I hope sounds like you're looking very much forward to that. Thank you. I'm glad I was able to scoop you up one more time before you officially leave the professional procurement world at your side. But thank you, Richard, for coming in to do this podcast. I'll open the floor to you if you have any comments or statements.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you to you, Bruno. When I learned of what you were doing years ago. That, again, was through my professional curiosity. I discovered he works. I can't remember. I saw something. I said, "Oh, I wonder what this is." And it's, "Oh, who's this Bruno guy? What's he do?" and then I reached out to you, and we had our first connection. And I followed a number of your other podcasts that you've had with colleagues and such. And I think it's a fantastic way to share what experience and knowledge we have amongst the community of practitioners, so that we learn something new and then make that connection, and then hopefully apply it in a value-driven way for our fellow Canadians that we're here to serve. So thank you again for the invitation, for your continued efforts in doing just that. And knowing that you and I have a difference in age, I'm expecting to continue watching you and hearing about you for maybe at least another 20 years or so, thereabouts, But I am looking forward to retirement. I'm leaving in a healthy way with a strong team behind me. I'm very proud of the team that do work for me to this day, and my colleagues. We are staying focused on what it is our government expects us to do, as well as what our department, our minister and our deputy minister have put out there as outcomes for the Department of National Defense. This government our country is facing challenges from groups and countries that we probably didn't expect that to happen. And we're now all jointly adjusting to that. And so you can expect that I'm going to stay curious, but on a personal level now. I watch the news every day, and I may occasionally call upon a colleague saying, "Hey, so how are we actually addressing this?" My colleagues know enough about me that to say, you can expect a question or a call from Richard and saying, "Hey, Richard wants to know about this," because I'm just that curious. But again, thanks again for inviting me.
Thank you. There you have it. Richard Quinn coming to share his very insightful experience, knowledge, and be sure to give this podcast a second listen to if you need to, because there's a lot of really tangible and useful information here. I want to thank you all for listening, and continue to like and share this podcast to those who may find value in it. And I will see you in the next one. Thank you, and bye-bye.